Happy birthday, Ed.
And I hope you have an opportunity to play maybe Trivia Pursuit with your family to celebrate your birthday. And just remember, for movie Trivial Pursuit, it's Schindler's Roof, not Schindler's List. Thank you. Happy birthday. We love you, buddy.
Have a great 50th.
Remember the time we were both eye to eye and we both knew the reasons why. Seemed like we faced the world on our own. Before we collide, and we just take a moment collecting reflections of theirs and remember the path that we chose. Spring light to us this year again. Can't stand to face the fear again. Will you always laugh about those things? It's enough to make a man feel sour, burning minutes every day by the hour, just to end up gone like everything else.
I can't believe 50 years. Oh my goodness. Time just flies. After a very long evening, night, and morning, Ed finally came into the world at 1:30 p.m. on July 25th, 1974, in Hackensack Hospital. It wasn't easy, but he did it.
The day that Edward was born, I shouldn't say just the day, because it seemed like it was like a day and a night. It was quite an interminable time. We started off in the evening, and he wasn't born until the next afternoon, and it was quite a traumatic experience. But then Edward came along, and it was really a thrill and an excitement. We had to learn a new life, having a baby in the house. It was quite a change of lifestyle for us, having been married for a number of years and single, and now having a baby in the house. It was quite a change in our lifestyle. But Edward was wonderful. He was an easy baby. We didn't have a whole lot of problems, and life started to change little by little as he grew up.
Well, I think that we were very blessed because Edward was a really easy child to deal with, and we were very inexperienced. So it just made life so much easier that he was so easy. And I have to say this, when he did something, he put his whole self into it. When he got on a kick, I used to call it a kick, like if he wanted to be a bus driver, he would walk into that and he would do this for days. And sometimes he wouldn't answer you if he was taking on another character. Sometimes he wouldn't answer you unless you called him by the right name. He would make up a different name. But he was such a fun child, really, and he was so easy to get along with. And we were really blessed, and to this day, I feel that way. This is a precious piece, a lock of hair from Edward's first haircut. And the date on it, did we have the date on that, Roger?
Yes.
What is it? Oh, yeah, 4/30/75. Maybe it's not his first haircut, but it was one of his haircuts, and we liked the color of it, so we decided to take it.
So Ed was a real entrepreneur. In fact, he sent a thing to the Tooth Fairy, and in here is one of his teeth, and it says, "To the Tooth Fairy, $2 would be nice."
He was a real good time, Charlie. And that's his friend Josh Eisenberg. We still see his parents. He always knew he wanted to go into the military. That's another thing I remember.
My brother Ed, he was a good brother growing up. We had a lot of fun times together. He would read me stories when we were little, especially at Christmas. The night before Christmas was our favorite to read together. Growing up, our favorite place to go in the summer was Lake George, New York. We would slide into, there was one inn that we always stayed in, and we would slide into the lake and have homemade donuts the next morning. In the morning, he would build a fort out of boxes and then point his finger at me and chase me with his finger, and it made me so mad. He was never mean to me, like as a kid. You know, when we were kids, you know, we always had fun together. He was never a mean brother or anything like that. He always looked out for me. When I was in elementary school, I think 1 or 2 years he might have still been at Euclid, and we would walk home together. Dee and Poppy would drop us off, and then we would walk home together.
They blended the middle school and high school together, so he used to drive you to school in the morning.
We like to go and play in the snow a lot, build snowman, having the holidays at our house. And there was the little kids table that all the kids had to sit at, including Ed. We would always go together for Halloween, go to our neighbors. We didn't go very far, just went to around our block. We would go just between Christmas and New Year to New York City with my parents' friends Alex and Mary and their son Danny, which I think Danny's about the same age as me. And it was always fun to go in and have dinner at the Peking Duck and see the tree at Rockefeller and look at the windows decorated for Christmas, Macy's and all those. And it was always a good time to go to New York, and the dinner was always good. Christmas Eve to Christmas Day, the rule in the family was that nobody could go down to look at their gifts until everybody was up, so I'd be nagging everybody early in the morning to get them up to go look at everything. And Ed didn't like that. He didn't like getting woken up early.
That's probably the same right now. When we lived in Hasbrook Heights, we used to grow vegetables on the side of the house, primarily tomatoes. But this one year, by accident, we wound up with a hot pepper plant. Well, the little hot peppers look like cherry tomatoes. And Edward one day came along and he thought he was going to be very clever and eat one of the tomatoes, but instead he ate one of the hot cherry peppers. And I think that he regretted having done that because his mouth was open and his tears were in his eyes. This was a poem that Ed wrote on March the 19th, 1984. He was 10. And it's, hi-ho, the cat lost his toe. B.D., the mouse said he. Meese teased the cat and some cheese. Sid hid. You know what the cat did? By Edward J. Gengaro. Over the years, we were fortunate enough to do a lot of traveling. And one particular trip that I think about was California. That was very special, that trip. One day in particular that I always think about was we were along the coast, and we were doing some sightseeing, and we were standing watching the birds, and we picked up some snacks, and Edward had a corn dog, and he was holding the corn dog up in his hand, and all of a sudden a seagull came along, and the seagull snatched the corn dog out of his hand. Now, Edward was very talented. In addition to poems, he also wrote a limerick, and it goes like this: There once was a snake. His name was Drake. He was tall. His brother was small. He loved to bake.
When Ed was a young boy, he had a great imagination, and although he had friends and he loved to play with them, he could spend hours by himself acting out scenarios, and he used to spend time and time again with soldiers, the little plastic soldiers, and he would spend hours reenacting all kinds of wars and whatever, and he had such an imagination, and he would get on a kick. And if he got on a kick, he was on a kick. And so if you called him Ed, and he was on a kick where he was making himself Joe, if I called him Ed, he wouldn't answer. When he got into a scenario, he stuck with it, and he pulled you into it. And it used to make me laugh, because when I knew he was in a kick, I'd call him by his real name, and he wouldn't answer. It was just such a funny thing. Even though he loved to play soldier, I never really, I thought it was just a game. I never thought that it would lead to his experience in West Point and becoming an Army officer. I just thought it was boys' games, that he used to play. But when I think about it, I think it was very good that he was able to live out his dream of when he was a kid. And I never realized it at the time, because he would get into kicks. One day he would be some kind of bus driver or a car driver or a big truck driver. And so, but the kick that was there more often than not had something to do with the military. And I'm glad he was able to live that out as an adult.
When it came time that the end of Ed's high school years was coming to an end, started thinking about college. And it's interesting, we traveled around to many different colleges. Some of the colleges had ROTC programs, and we thought maybe, he thought that maybe that would be something that would be interesting for him to do. But all along, we didn't realize that in the back of his mind, he had West Point as a place that he really wanted to go. He talked to a guidance counselor in the school who really, I don't think really gave him much of an encouragement. So when it came time to start the enrollment process for West Point, he actually did most of it on his own. And he was bound and determined, and it worked out that he got his acceptance to West Point and his nomination from Senator Lautenberg, and before you know it, he was on his way.
I never really thought he was going to go into the Army. In fact, Dad encouraged him. I was dead set against it. I was hoping he wouldn't go into the military, because I guess I was worried, and I knew that he had so much talent, that he could do so many things. But of course, when he got really serious about it, I certainly didn't try to do anything to stop it. But I never thought those games that he played would actually lead up to a career.
We did room together several times. I think about the occasional, dance parties we'd have in our room. I think about your obnoxious drill sergeant alarm clock that you had, I think, yuck year when we were roommates. Wake up, "Rise and shine," it would say, and make all this noise. And just the countless good times, again, that we had at your house. We went on spring break one time to the Caribbean, had a fantastic time, frequented the nightclub there, I think every night, and buying the cheapest beer that they had, which I think was Bud Lights. And they were coming so fast, I think we were just putting an X on the receipt. We had a pretty good stack of those at the end of the trip. But anyway, lots of great times. And I still remember you coming home with me to Reno. And that was such a great experience. And I remember taking you rabbit hunting and how much fun we had walking out there in the Nevada desert, shooting rabbits and just having a good time.
Time goes quickly. We got older. He was there for my high school graduation. I was there for his high school graduation. His first year at West Point was very hard because I missed him a lot. When he had the chance to call, we were all very excited to hear from him. So that was hard.
I didn't go to my high school prom. I decided I was going to go away for the weekend with a couple of friends. I was actually punished. I couldn't take the car, so we had to take a bus, and we took it Saturday morning, so we were checking into a motel on the beach, and Ed and his friend had to leave their hotel. So they were checking into this hotel at the same time as us. They got the room next door to us, and they came over to our room and asked if they could borrow shampoo. That's how we met. We exchanged numbers at the end of the weekend, and I didn't know if I would hear from him or not, but he gave me his number on it was a little card from West Point that said, "A cadet shall not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do." It's kind of like a shady area, Seaside Heights, and there are a lot of crazy things going on that night. I felt safe with Ed right away. I kind of just felt safe and comfortable from the beginning. And sure enough, he called. It seems like a lifetime ago. We were both 18 when we met, over 31 years ago. He was at West Point already, and I took a lot of trips there, a lot of trips. It was about an hour from where I lived in Yonkers, and I drove there quite a lot because he couldn't leave very much at that point in time because he was only going to his second year at West Point. One funny memory from back when I was in college, Ed was helping me write one of my papers for my Civil War and Reconstruction class, and so we were on the phone, and it was pretty late. Ed had long days at West Point. I remember we were on the phone for a while, and it was late, and Ed kept falling asleep, and I'd hear him snoring on the other end of the line, and I wasn't quite done with my paper, so I was like, "Wake up." Back then, there was no unlimited long distance calling, and so when we, after Ed graduated West Point and he was in the Army, and I remember each of our phone bills each month were like over $300 each, and it was actually cheaper after we got married. Our month's rent was $525 a month in Hopkinsville for our 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom duplex, which was like much cheaper than our like $700 combined phone bill a month.
That was a very exciting day, the day he graduated from West Point. He's always been one to never give up, always to keep trying and trying, and I think that I'm kind of the same way, to never give up on life. You just keep up, even if things get hard, you just keep at it.
Edward's graduation from West Point, June 1996, and I can't believe all these years have gone by. Edward came into the Army, had spent a few years. He had his Army career, and then moved on. And that was quite a day. It was exciting for us, and I'm sure it was more than exciting for him. Graduation day was a special day when Edward had finally finished his time at West Point. We had a wonderful party at the office at the West Point Club, better known as the Officers Club, and we had a whole bunch of family members at the party that day. And as the day went on, we started to think about that things were definitely changing. We're no longer going to be able to visit or see Edward at West Point because he was now moving on. His first stop was going to be Fort Benning, Georgia, and then later on he went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And it was very emotional. It was very emotional. I thought back about the time when now I was on the other side of the coin, thinking back about when I went into the Army and what my parents must have thought. And now I see that I'm the parent, and he's going off on his adventure in the Army, and it was quite a mixed emotional period of time.
Man, I have a lot of great memories working with Ed. Ed and I had the honor and privilege to serve together in the great 101st Airborne Division, specifically in 3rd Battalion, 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment. And I was blessed to have Ed as my executive officer when I commanded HHC 3rd of the 502nd. And Ed was a great XO. Ed was a great XO for a lot of reasons. Number one, we always used to talk about how people would get really spun up and excited about stuff, and Ed would always be like, don't get spun up. We don't need to get spun up on this. He was always very even-keeled, very calm, which is a great balance for me because I'm not that way. And so, Ed would be like, hey, we probably don't need to get spun up on these things. And it was a great balance. One particular story comes to mind, and I'm laughing. You had to be there, but I know Ed will appreciate this. We were doing a rotation at the Joint Readiness Training Center in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And you go to Fort Polk and you basically exercise and simulate like you're in combat. And because Ed and I were in charge of the headquarters and headquarters company, we were responsible for lots of the non-sexy things like water and soup and supplies. And and of course at JRTC, it simulates battle also in terms of you're exhausted all the time. You're not sleeping. There's always something happening, so you get really tired. Well, one night, Ed and I got in our vehicles and we got together a logistics package of water and food and ammunition to bring to our rifle companies that were on the quote-unquote battlefield. And we drove all night, and at Fort Polk there are wild horses running around. And I'll never forget the time where Ed and I were in the vehicle together, which was unusual because the XO and commander shouldn't ride together, but Ed and I always rode together because we liked hanging out together and BSing. And again, Ed telling me not to get spun up all the time on things. Well, anyways, we were with our driver, Stewie. His last name was Stewart. We called him Stewie. He was driving our Humvee. We were under nods and all just really tired. But I think our driver, Stewie, was particularly tired. And he as we were going along, he stopped and we were making sure there weren't opposing forces out there. And Stewie was looking around in his nods, his night vision goggles, and he said, Sir, Captain Halen, Lieutenant Gengaro, I think I see something. And so Ed and I put our nods down and we started looking, and our driver said to us, man, I think I see horses with antlers going backwards. And we had no idea what he was talking about. And we were like, what? He's like, yeah, the horses, they have antlers and they're going backwards. So I think that's probably because of how just fatigued we were.
Ed definitely would always downplay different situations. I remember he was in Panama just under a month, and I was hearing from other people how Ed almost died, and I didn't know what was going on. Anyway, when he got back, I found out the story was that him and another guy were in this Humvee, and like the ground underneath the Humvee was giving way, and they both like had to jump out, and then the Humvee went down a cliff. I don't even know how far. It's still down there. They were never able to get it back up. It was at least 60 feet or more. But anyway, they jumped out. But if they didn't, like that's what people were talking about, that he could have died. So anyway, he kind of just fluffed it off like it wasn't any big deal at all. One night where there was actually a really bad tornado in Clarksville. In fact, like a really old church was completely devastated, and the whole downtown of Clarksville was hit really, really hard. And Ed was out in the field that night, and I remember the people calling around the next morning from our unit, finding out that everyone was okay, if people had power, what the situation was. And I remember Ed got back, they had no idea that there was a tornado. And when I finally heard from him, I asked him, how it was last night, because he was just sleeping on the ground. And he was like, it was a bit windy last night. And I was like, a bit windy? There was a tornado that went through. So anyway, definitely downplay things.
I remember I was sleeping in my Humvee one night, and Ed came up and knocked on the window and said, "Hey, do you want to go fly some Class 4? Of course, I said no, but he's like, well, we got to. And so we spent the entire day picking up on UH-60s, picking up packages of concertina wire and other things so our rifle companies could build defensive fighting positions. And inevitably, we would we would get a grid coordinate and we would sling load all this stuff in, and inevitably it would end up in the wrong place. No fault of our own. But there was one time where Ed and I were on the same helicopter, and there was this major lieutenant colonel that was with us, and for whatever reason he insisted. Rule number one, and I'll never forget this, General Clark was the commander at the time, always used to tell us, never yell on the radio. When you're in combat, you don't yell on the radio. You just, and this guy, Ed and I were on the helicopter, he was like, I'm at grid coordinate, pop, and he was screaming. Now, you don't need to yell on the mic because the pilots are sitting right there. And I remember us looking at each other and Ed going something to the effect of, man, this guy gets spun up really easily.
I knew Ed and his wife Jill when we were just young things, newly married and living in Clarksville, Tennessee for Todd and I, and Hopkinsville, Kentucky for Ed and Jill. And we decided to go out for a very fancy Italian restaurant in Hopkinsville. And we sat down and ordered our delicious entrees, and the very formal waiter came by to offer us the parmigiana. And in that moment, we learned that it's not Parmesan cheese, that fancy cheese from Italy, it's parmigiana cheese, and it will always be parmigiana. And I learned that with Ed Gengaro.
The day that our little boy married his best friend, because Jill was a wonderful person, and that made me very happy. You know, when you lose a child to another family, for them to start themselves, it's very emotional. Jill, when we first met her, you know, we really didn't know how to respond. But after weeks and months and so forth, we really learned to love her, and she's a wonderful person. And at that point, I got to the point where just before they got married that I said, this is going to be very good for Ed, and hopefully it will also be good for Jill. And I know it would be. And here we are today, and guess what? It was great for everybody, and we love Jill like she's our own daughter, and And I'm so happy that Ed found somebody who could make the rest of his life happy for him. And I'm grateful for that, very much grateful for that.
I was glad that he was able to be in our wedding and I was able to be in his. That was a beautiful wedding. I was so happy that Mama Addie was able to make it then, because she was kind of sick, but she was able to make it, and she was glad to be there. I remember her saying, I was glad I was at Ed's wedding. The chapel was decorated so nice for Christmas.
We had an amazing wedding. December of last year was 25 years ago. We loved our wedding. Like it was a wedding that, I don't know. I know I thought about it for like years afterwards. Like it was one of those things where, you know, you spend so much money on a wedding and you're like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, is it worth it? You know, you put that money as like a down payment on a house or whatever. But for me, it was worth it. I mean, we were young. We had like a fairy tale wedding. It was everything that like I hoped it would be in a wedding itself. So much fun. All our friends, our family, just, you know, it was really amazing, the experience of the wedding itself. But better yet was like just looking forward to the life that we were about to start together, or continue as like a married couple after over 5 years being together. I had just finished graduate school literally like 2 weeks before I was ready. It was funny because, you know, moving from New York to Kentucky, talk about culture shock, but like I was like running, just all over the place, working like 3 jobs, student teaching, you know, finishing my my thesis and just all the craziness of that, and then moving to Kentucky where it was like, woo, you're like, it's like definitely different change of pace, and it took me a while to get a job, so it was like, you know, very, very slow pace. But it was a really nice change of pace. I was worried that, you know, that I wouldn't like living there, but I loved living in Kentucky. It was really a fun time. We have like great memories looking back to our time in Hopkinsville, and we even got to go back with the kids back in 2019, and I visited my old friend Diane, who was my bike riding partner there, and we got to show the kids like where we used to live, and just that was really a fun walk down memory lane. When Ed and I were getting married, I had inscribed inside his wedding band a line from a Jimmy Buffett song that's from Come Monday. It says, "With you I'd walk anywhere." And so knowing we were, like, I was marrying into the Army at the time, I had that inscribed in his wedding band. And the funny part is we actually moved more after Ed got out of the Army than, you know, we were actually only at Fort Campbell together. Ed got out of the Army July 10th of 2001. We thought he might get called back after 9/11. He did not, but we continued to move with Frito-Lay. That was probably moved us the most. So we moved to Charlotte after a short stay at Ed's parents' house. We got the call that Ed got the job with Frito-Lay. So we moved to Charlotte and we rented a house for a couple of years, and then we bought a house, but we had to kind of delay the purchase, and we didn't move in until December of 2002, and then we ended up finding out we were going to move only like a few months later. So it's kind of not a great purchase. I was pregnant when we moved. We ended up moving, I guess it was the end of June, beginning of July 2003, and we moved to Maryland. I always thought it was like an adventure moving to different places. We kind of had a different like radius to travel and to like sightsee, and, you know, just to kind of get to know a different area. So I always thought it was exciting to move to different areas. Obviously, after having kids brought a different dynamic to moving around. So probably our move from Maryland to Pennsylvania to the Williamsport, Montoursville area, that was the hardest move for me because James and John were both born while we lived in Maryland, and it was like leaving their first home. I had a lot of good friends in that area from Mom's Club and just different connections I made, and that was the hardest move for me. Was when we left Maryland and moved to Pennsylvania. But yeah, it was a new adventure. And then Peter was born while we were in Pennsylvania. He's our only PA-born son, although James and John both were born in Delaware, even though we never lived in Delaware. We went to the hospital with the NICU, and it was a good thing we did because we needed it for John. So this house, Ed really liked this house. I wasn't crazy about the area. It seemed kind of industrial and wasn't crazy about the area at first. Ed liked this house. It had a lot of property, so he could hunt on our property, which was good for that point that he wouldn't have to go somewhere else to hunt. So that was kind of neat. But we had like an issue immediately when we moved in, and I smelled mildew in the dining room / living room area. And we come to find out within like 2 weeks after buying the house that there was a deck off the master bedroom that was never flashed, and water had been coming in the whole side of the house for like 7 years. And anyway, there was mold, and we basically had to remove and replace an entire side of our house. We had to get a lawyer to get our insurance to cover it, which took a couple of years. It was very stressful. And the joke is that we know that we have at least one good side to our house. Of course, it was, we put all this money in. It's not like we're like, well, we're not going to have anything to show for it because people expect like 4 walls, four sides of a house. So it didn't up the value. So it was a stressful start. I did come to like this house in this area, but it was very slow going for me because that was a very stressful beginning. We really like it here now, and we've been here longer than anywhere else since we've been married. But this year was 11 years since we moved in.
Well, hey there, Ed. It's been a minute, but as much as I want to wish you a happy birthday, I just want to say that I'm even happier that you have made my best friend happy for more than half of her life. So to you, Ed, wish you all the best. Here's to the next 50.
Yeah, I hope you're going to enjoy yourself. We miss you guys very, very much. I can't wait for you to come down to Florida where we can shoot all the time, everywhere. It's pretty amazing down here. And, I'll never forget you taking me shooting. What a great time we had. And, yeah, man, love you and miss you guys, and wish you all the best. So happy birthday and enjoy.
Happy birthday.
Many years ago, my father-in-law, Dee Dee's dad, wanted to take her and her sister on a trip to Ireland, which they did, and they had quite a wonderful time, and they enjoyed the trip. And as the years went by, he passed away, and we all decided that it would be nice to go back again, and we did. Diana and Jill and Ed and Mom and myself went on the trip, and we toured pretty much all over Ireland. We went back to the places that where we met some of the family members, and it was a wonderful trip. One particular time I thought was a little bit more unusual than the rest. Each night we went to different pubs and so forth. This one particular night we went to a pub, and there was somebody. Well, there were two things that were interesting. First of all, the one thing that was kind of crazy was somebody got sick, so they called an ambulance. But apparently the ambulance drivers had been to a pub before they started driving the ambulance, and they were inebriated, and they crashed the ambulance into a fire hydrant. That was the one part. The other part that was comical was the place was so crowded that we all couldn't sit together. So as the night went on, we discovered that Ed wound up with a bunch of German tourists, and they were all singing songs, and Ed was right in the middle of it with the with the German tourists.
We've traveled a lot over the years. We took a bunch of trips to Canada when James and John were little. We took a trip to Ireland back in July of 1999. So shortly after we got married, we went with Ed's whole family. I was newly married, and so here I am really sick. I had to see this Irish doctor. He gave me a shot in my hip, which was extremely painful. I had a horribly high fever, pretty much missed all of Dublin. I sweated through all my clothes, all my underwear within the first day and a half that I was there. I was just changing. And the hotel laundry would have cost more than just buying all new underwear. So here I am, newly married, going shopping with my new in-laws for underwear in a foreign country where sizes are different. We moved a lot, more so actually, ironically enough, after Ed got out of the Army. We were in Fort Campbell together for the first part of our marriage up until July of 2001. And anyway, when we were at the point where we had moved to Charlotte eventually after Ed got out of the Army, but then when we were moving from Charlotte to Maryland, we were packing up our car, and the movers had already come, and we were just getting things that they couldn't take, and our car was so packed to the point that we had this one little jar of this little bottle of Tabasco sauce, and we couldn't fit it. That's how packed our car was, and we had to leave it behind. And it's just such a funny thing to think back at, because we had it so packed to the brim that we couldn't fit one more thing. We were watching something on TV in Hopkinsville. It was a main news station, and along the bottom would scroll different news about each state, what was going on in that state. And for some reason, for New Jersey, it said, New Jersey drivers are angry and furious. And we just were laughing hysterically. When we first got married, we lived in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, where Ed was stationed nearby Fort Campbell, and we had this really sweet elderly couple that lived next door to us, George and Jane Mulesix, and he was a World War II veteran, and they were a really sweet couple. We went over there sometimes, and I remember George telling us stories about when he was in the horse cavalry, and Jane would always say, George, you're dating yourself. We knew this guy was really old. We were in our early 20s. This guy was mid to, late 80s. Our mailboxes were kind of in one big thing down the, a little bit down the road, because we were in duplexes, and they were locked in a thing down the road. So we kind of met up with George as we were all walking to get our mail one morning, and it was icy, and George fell, he just went down, but he kept his head up, so he did not hit his head on the ground, and he's I'm all right. He was, because we were did this guy just die? Because he just literally just took a really, what could have been a really bad spill, but he kept his head up like a pro, and we were just holding ourselves together, and then as soon as we got back into our duplex, we just busted out laughing, because we just couldn't contain ourselves, because it was really a funny sight. I mean, obviously he didn't get hurt, so we could laugh about it.
As Edward got older, he went to West Point, then he met Jill. What a lucky thing that was for both of them. I think they're a perfect couple. They were married a while. They started to move because he was getting different kinds of jobs. We were always somehow were able to find a way to visit them. And we loved every minute of it. Down in Maryland and all the different places they lived, because he did changed jobs a couple of times, and even after he got out of the Army. So I'm just so grateful that even though that we were living distances apart at times, we always got a chance to see them. And of course now it's perfect because we're quite close in distance from where they live and where we live. So that makes it really a wonderful setup.
When we found out that James was going to be born, and we were in Washington, and we were staying in a hotel, and Edward and Jill asked us to come into their room. They wanted to talk to us about something, and the something was that Mr. James was going to be coming down the road. That's how we found out about it. And a while later, James was born, and we left New Jersey and drove down to Maryland. And it was an exciting thing. What was going through my mind at the time was what I like to call the cycle of life. You know, now all of a sudden we're the grandparents, and it's a whole new experience for us. And it's been fantastic. But as far as I'm concerned, having 3 grandsons, James and John and Peter, and it's been really a wonderful experience.
I remember I was working and I had to leave early. And I think the principal gave me a hard time, and I said, well, I'm having a grandchild and I'm leaving. So anyhow, so remember that? And then we got in the car and we drove, where was it? Down in Maryland. Isn't that what he was, what, Maryland, yeah. And we got in the car and we drove down, and Jill, I think he was just born.
Yes.
And we were so nervous and excited, and then we saw the little bugger, and he was adorable, and since then we're in love.
The cycle of life. Now we're grandparents, and it started a whole new thing. But
one thing I really love about Dad is the appreciation he has for tradition. It's super important to him to keep a family that holds to specific traditions and values, one of which is the yearly Christmas tree that we have. Each year we'll chop down a different Christmas tree at a local tree farm, and then once the year is over, we'll take the tree out of our living room and we'll put it in the woods. And we have a whole line of Christmas trees that have just been there from ever since we moved here 11 years ago. One funny memory I have with Dad was when my college search took us to Texas, and we decided to go to one of the best steakhouses in the entire state. So we walk into the Dallas Chop House, and we are by far 2 of the smallest people in that entire place. And it was just a sweet memory that I have with him. On that same trip, you also took me to my first rodeo, so I'm very appreciative of the new experiences that you've always been able to give me.
We were going to Hershey Park with the family. It was us, Tyler, Trennan, Trina, and James was born. So James and Trina were little at the time. And we were going to Hershey Park because you were working for a company, Frito-Lay, and you were getting free tickets. So as we were having lunch at the Frito-Lay convention that was at Hershey Park, one of the things that they were serving was Utz potato chips.
One way Dad has been super influential in my life is he's taken me hunting. He's given me an outdoorsy appreciation. We've gone hunting numerous times in the backwoods, and it's just a real testament to his patience, just the amount of time that it takes to prepare for a hunt and what it looks like to actually just sit in the woods all day and just wait, be one with nature, be able to just appreciate what God has given us. The woods in the backyard has always been a super important reason of why we move to the different houses we do. Dad has pushed me a lot to get involved with a lot of different things, and certainly sports was one of them. I've played football a lot because Dad played football when he was in high school and everything, and Dad was my first football coach back in flag football, back in Montoursville when we went winless. That was my first ever football season. And the very next season, my dad wasn't one of the coaches, but he was there to support me the whole season, and we won the championship. So that was really neat. And then he's just been there throughout my athletic career, and just throughout it all, he's been a great role model, and he's drove me to a lot of practices and to all my games, and he's really just been supportive over the years.
His relationship with God and just being called to help out in the community and other people has grown. We had the opportunity to go with a group from our church to Mississippi. It was Hurricane Katrina relief. That was a really amazing experience. I actually was pregnant with Peter at the time, so I was not feeling great. I was really pretty nauseous. And we were in Mississippi in July. It was really hot. We were clearing jungle to help this family clear the land for a house they were going to have built.
Some of my earliest memories, probably in Montoursville, just hanging out, playing outside, playing catch, just eating dinner on the back porch with the family, and just like going on hikes. We've gone on a lot of vacations over the years, and Dad usually helps plan them and make sure we get to where we need to get to, usually on time. Sometimes it's closer than others, but we always get to where we need to get to, and vacations are always really fun. We do a trip every year, and there's definitely some highlights. Every time we would go to Disney, Dad would always wake up early in the morning to reserve some of the Fast Pass and reserve other tickets for different things like the Salem Witch Trial, and just a lot of different times when he would just wake up early so that we could reserve anything that we needed to. And there's just so many funny memories throughout the years, like in 2019 when we just ate barbecue every single meal, and Dad could barely walk because he had just eaten way too much meat over like a couple day time span. And there's a lot of funny memories throughout the years, and we've had a lot of good memories and good times together.
Everybody always looks forward to Mom's Christmas Eve with her cooking, and there's a lot of, we always like getting together. It always brings a lot of laughter to the table.
So many memories over a 50-year period that it's really hard to pinpoint a particular thing. But in the years that Ed has been an adult, we've had a lot of fun and a lot of good times. Eating crabs in Maryland, the Army-Navy games were always an excitement. And of course the holidays, Christmas, and Easter, and those were memorable times. And I think back on, as I said, the holidays in particular were always time together that we enjoyed.
Stories to remember. I'm trying to think. There's so many funny ones. I mean, none really come to mind, although, wait, actually, where is this room 408?
Dad is one of the toughest people I know for sure. He's gone through a lot of different injuries and different things. Like one time when we were out by the blueberry bush and he fell off the ladder and got a pretty bad injury, but he wasn't complaining too much. He's just like, all right, it'll be all right. Well, I'm gonna be fine. And he's just a very positive person throughout a lot of adversity that he's faced, and I think the military has helped him with a lot of that, going to West Point, and he's just one of the toughest people that I know.
He's a good listener. If I have a problem, I could always call him, and he's not judgmental. He just, listens. He's very friendly. He's very outgoing and very caring. He's always concerned about how you're doing. I just love my brother.
Dad has really helped me grow in a lot of different ways with schoolwork and spiritually. He takes classes in theology, and he talks to me a lot about the things that he learns, and he teaches me and gets me interested in really important topics that help me grow. He helps me understand a lot of things that I don't really hear from anywhere else.
One thing about Ed that it's one of the reasons I think we work so well together. He's always the calming one. I get more easily rattled, and Ed keeps me in check, and like we can balance each other out pretty well. And I think that's something that I've seen Ed with other people too. It's not just me. He's always like the calming one, and he could take everything in stride, and he doesn't get easily bent out of shape about things. He has like a calm nature to him, and I think it helps him in all his relationships with with friends, with probably, I'm sure, at work. I mean, I when he was in the Army, I know it's true with some of his the people that he worked with there. He's pretty much the same with everyone. He's more of like, on an even keel, and could kind of put things in perspective, and big things don't rattle him. He has that calming nature, and he's someone you could count on. And
one of the biggest memories that I think back to with Ed and Jill and having an impact on our lives was when we took in an ex-student of mine named Bethy. And Bethy had the exact same birthday as Jill 20 years later. And I remember how Ed and Jill as a couple not only inspired us, but also helped us to, to navigate through taking on another child into our home that obviously needed help at the time. And since that point, Nina and I have fostered 2 other children and about to be 3. And I know we definitely depended on Ed's guidance and Jill's guidance just to get us there. So that's probably the most meaningful thing that's impacted our lives.
Certainly, Dad has helped me in my walk with Christ, and he's been very prevalent in that. I've gone to a lot of seminars and different things with Dad, and just a lot of opportunities, and he's answered a lot of questions and really helped make it clear about just my faith and just things like that. But Dad has just been there through everything, and through all the ups and all the downs, he's just always there, and he's just someone that you can talk to and someone that you can relate to who's been through things, and you couldn't ask for a better dad. Dad has been an extremely important vessel in my life. He's just been my rock, somebody that I look to for advice. He's somebody that I think about often, and I just care about so much regarding his opinion, his advice, what he's learned over the years, his wisdom that comes from the military and his work career, just his romantic relationship, everything that has made him become the family man that he is. He's just somebody I've always looked up to. He's pretty much the perfect father. He's just someone who's willing to admit his mistakes, somebody who's always willing to look forward and move on, somebody who doesn't keep score, and he's just been somebody my entire life that I can lean upon heavily when I need to.
Over the years, we've collected Christmas ornaments. My mom had, for our wedding shower, had done like a wishing well of Christmas ornaments to get us started with ornaments since we were getting married around Christmas. And so throughout the years, for some special anniversaries, I've gotten us like an ornament, like a special ornament for our anniversary. So this last anniversary for our 25th, I had an ornament made. I wrote, "With you, I'd still walk anywhere," and it's definitely true. We've lived a lot of places, gone a lot of places, and as long as we're together, it's good. I remember a time that my mother-in-law had asked how we do it with all the moving, that she wouldn't have wanted to do all that. And I never felt that it was a problem because I was always with Ed, so it didn't, you know, I don't know that I would like move everywhere if it was by myself, but with him, I wasn't by myself. We were always together, and we've walked a lot of places together.
You always brought me home with you on weekends. You helped me get to the airport to fly home over Christmas break, or over the summer, and I really, really appreciate that from you and your entire family. You're such a giving person, and so is your family.
What are your first emotions now that it's been 50 years later?
Oh man, I don't know. It's just so hard to believe all of the different chapters that we've gone through, and you know, we've been, you know, with him and through his whole life, starting as a baby, and then as a young child, and an older child growing into an adult, all the different stages of the military and working with the companies Frito-Lay, and our time with Ed, and then with Jill as after they got married. Our life with them has always been very special.
So the neat part about our relationship is we've been together so long that we basically grew up together, because we've been together since we were both 18, and you know, so we went through just like so much of growing up and those exciting first stages of being out on your own. As a couple, it was just a really exciting time. Just the ups and downs, being there for each other through everything, like the good and the bad. Ed always had a good relationship with my mom, and that was really special. And it's just gotten so much stronger over the years. We realize the importance of keeping our focus on God. It's just been special. I mean, every aspect, like, you know, having, you know, each of our kids and just experiencing all that together. And it's hard to sum up. We've been together over 31 years, and it's hard to sum that up because it's really special. And that is my, you know, my world. Like, with just everything. It's hard to think of a time without him because I have to go back so far. And even when he just goes away, you know, he's away now for a couple of days, and, you know, I always miss him. We always look forward to being together, and just everything we share, you know, just, everything from like the joys when we had children and introduce them to the world to, you know, taking James to college for the first time, and just going to visit him at school, and just there's just always something new and exciting, and, you know, there's never a dull moment. It's been a journey that I wouldn't want to share with anybody else. So
I would like to say something in here about, I don't know where you want to put this in here, but I wrote some notes to myself.
Yeah, let's hear
about this. And
okay.
It's just a brief thing. I just scribbled these notes down. But I was when we started when this whole thing started about making this movie, I started thinking about Edward and how he does things and how he lives his life and so forth. And I started thinking about what would if somebody asked me what I would think would be the best way that I would describe his character. And I started thinking about the fact that he's very respectful. He's probably one of the most respectful people that I've ever known. He has respect for everybody and never changes his way of dealing with people. The other thing is kind. He's a very kind person. I think he's always been a kind person, and that comes out even more so now that he has children of his own. I see it all the time, the way he deals with his sons. And the other thing is patience. Again, he's probably one of the most patient people that I know. He never stops dealing with things. Case in point of a few days ago, I got a call from Peter that asking me about fixing something on the drum set, and I tried to describe it over the phone, and it's kind of difficult. And they weren't able to fix the problem. But Ed was dogged about it. He worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, and finally he told me that they had solved the problem. And that's how he is. So that's his character. He's respectful and kind and patient. And I don't think you could say much more than that.
Where'd all the time go? It's starting to fly. See how the hands go, waving goodbye.
Hey Ed, it's your old friend Aaron Kohler, company mates and classmates and roommates at West Point. For those of you that don't know me, happy birthday, Ed! Congratulations on 50 years of life. I just passed the half-century mark myself about a month ago, and I wasn't thrilled to join that club, but I'm proud to know you, Ed, and to call you a friend, and happy to use this opportunity of us both turning 50 to say hello and say hello to all the Gengaro family. I love you, buddy, and hope you're having a great birthday, celebrating with family and friends and loved ones, and proud to know you and call you my friend. Look forward to catching up in person, and wishing you love and happiness and peace and many more birthdays to come. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.